Noah, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely.
So if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and tell the listeners and viewers who you are and what you do.
Who am I? That's the question. I'm Noah. I'm Noah Clark. I'm a business owner. I own a production company. I am a director. I'm an editor. I'm a telephone psychic. I wear many
You're
hats.
a cinematographer. You're a sound operator. You do it all, right?
Thanks to you now, I'm a cinematographer. Yes, I do.
Why thanks to me? I'm curious what your answer would be.
Yeah.
Why? Did I teach you too much and now you're not going to hire me anymore? Is that what happened?
I know too much now, and that's the problem.
Yeah. As soon as you bought 2 Amiras, that's when I knew I'd spoken too much about my love for Ari.
Well, it actually took me a long time to really proclaim what it is like I do.
Yeah.
I think we all sort of have that problem in the creative field. At some point, they call it something. They call it like imposter syndrome or something, right?
Yeah.
If you say like, I'm a director, it sounds like you have to say it with a confidence to know that you are a director. Now, you and I have worked together. I've been a director in how many projects have we worked together on? Like,
I don't know, a dozen maybe? A dozen or more?
A lot. And good stuff. But it takes a long time to, I think, to announce with authority, like what it is you do. You have to believe it first.
Yeah, no, imposter syndrome is super real. I still deal with imposter syndrome as a cinematographer, honestly. Speaking on that, what advice do you have for young people starting out? How do you get over imposter syndrome, if ever?
I think that the way you can get over imposter syndrome is to learn, what do they say? Like jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah.
So I am a director. I feel very confident about that. I am an editor. I feel very confident about that. I am a motion graphics artist. I feel very confident about that. I now am calling myself a colorist, even though, so I'm not trying to make money as a colorist. No, it's true.
I know.
This is how you get over imposter syndrome is you learn a little about a lot of things, because then you can communicate what you're trying to do to those people. So I was so intimidated, 20 years ago, I was so intimidated by a camera. I bought my first, what was your first camera, Lars?
It was actually the T2i.
Oh, really? Like the Canon?
So yeah, I was gonna buy. It was the Canon Rebel. I was gonna buy one of those like Canon XL2s. And then right as I was pulling the trigger, Canon announced the T2i. So I didn't have a camera for quite a while, actually. It's like I was interested in it, and I shot things on like mini DV, and I had at school we had that like Sony X1U or something like that I thought was incredible. It was like a $4,000 mini DV camera. And I was like,
and now can you imagine shooting on that now?
It's just such a piece of junk. And honestly, like you got your footage back and you go, there really isn't anything too special about this. But at the time, it just seemed so unachievable.
Yeah. I mean, I remember I went to the Sony store in Sony, like Sony in their lot, they have like this B stock store. And I bought the Sony TRV 900, which was like this little like mini DV. I probably still have it here somewhere. It's like a little tiny mini DV flip out screen. By the way, if I never shoot anything else ever on like a tape and log and capture, I'll be very happy. But I bought this little thing.
I think you're clear on that one.
Yeah, for sure. I convinced myself that like I had made it. Like this was it, Like,
Did it have a touch screen with sepia effects?
Oh yeah, sepia effects came in like like star wipes and everything like.
Yeah, absolutely.
No. My advice to anybody who's dealing with imposter syndrome is learn everything you can about whatever it is you're trying to do, because when somebody asks you about it, you have to speak intelligently about it. Like, I probably overstepped my bounds with you too much as a director, as telling you like, can we open up a little here and do this and da 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 da. But that's because
you know what you're doing.
I know what I'm doing, and I know we speak the same language. If I came in here and I said, I want to make it a little bit more, magic or some bullshit that I was trying to it's because
but I can figure that out. See, I almost wonder if it's because I hear a lot of both, right? I hear that what was the saying, master of none? It's like jack of all trades, master of none is what you don't want, right? I hear a lot of people say you got to be a Jedi in one craft. and then understand the very, 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 very basics of everything else so that you can communicate, but be a Jedi in that one thing. So I'm curious why you prefer to kind of just be almost not a Jedi, but definitely intelligent in just about everything.
Well, it's just necessity. When it's the same reason when I buy gear, I don't rent it out. I want everything just like in-house. If somebody calls you tomorrow, and a lot of people probably watching this will relate to this. If somebody calls you and they say, it's a Tuesday, can you guys do a shoot Wednesday, 2 camera setup, lights, sound, blah, blah, blah. I have 2 options. I can either A, go onto like ShareGrid, like rent a bunch of like cameras, lights, or like maybe call up people. I call you and then I call a gaffer and I call a sound person and da-da-da-da. Or I can walk over to the room, pull my 2 cameras, pull the lights, pull the sound, and do it all myself. Now, I've learned actually, and we can talk about this later in your podcast, but like I've learned there's a good reason not to do that. But doing that method actually allowed me to learn about all those things. And I think having that like on the ready, being able to now intelligently talk to such a talented DP like yourself, or talk to no, you are, come on, or talk to a sound recordist, or talk to a colorist in the Bay, or talk to somebody and say like, this is what I'm looking for. I think you're going to get a better result, and I think there's really something to that.
Yeah, I agree. Let's take a step back for a little bit and talk about how you first got started in the entertainment industry, and what were you doing? How are you making your money?
Well, I wasn't kidding about being a telephone psychic.
You've never told me this.
Oh, I had lots of interesting jobs. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
No, like 14, I was a busboy at Gladstone's in Malibu. You know Gladstone?
Okay, let's fast forward just a little bit further.
Okay? Wait. There's a good story here.
Okay, all right.
And then it was like 17, and I answered an ad for. I was 17. I was working security at a brothel for a very well-known madam. Oh yeah. No. This podcast is getting more interesting, by the way.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And I answered an ad for a telephone psychic, and I was working that job. 17 years old. By the way, there's only 3 things people want to talk about. Let me teach you the rules to being psychic. There's only 2 things people really want to talk about. Can you guess what they are?
Sure. No, I'm not even going to try. I don't want to embarrass myself. You tell me.
Let me be psychic and tell you right now.
Yeah,
okay, great. You're either having some problems with love. No. Is it money? Is it love or is it money? There's something going on with love and money. And guess what? Your life never has changed. It's the same thing. Anyway, so my good friend Mick Pacifici, who is a talented shooter and actually is making his living as a DIT now, nice. Turned me on to a friend's company, and they did. Which is, I believe, how you got your start, Lars. They did weddings.
Yep, that's right.
They did events and weddings and actually debutante balls. If you've never been to a debutante ball, you don't have.
Never have.
Very weird thing, yeah. But I cut my teeth for like 4 years, 5 years. Maybe no, not 5 years. 4 years as a wedding editor, videographer. I taught myself. The very first.
Doing your manual Ken Burns effects.
Oh my God! Should we tell your listeners about that story?
Sure, very
back
briefly.
In the Stone Age, before you could just add keyframes to something, if you wanted to do like a Ken Burns effect on a picture, we had
which
this
is to slowly push into an image, right?
Yeah. So if you want to like move into an image or move out or move left or move right, we had this like physical plate that you would put a picture on, and there'd be a camera facing down. I have like agita even thinking about this story, by the way. This is like the part of the interview where I start crying.
Okay, great.
If you wanted to get that effect, you would have a camera over this plate, and you'd set like a key point. Like you'd say like, okay, the plate's coming closer to the camera,
now
go
stop.
back,
yeah,
or left or right. Yeah. And then once you were happy, you'd hit record on the camera, stop. And that was like your push in. And then you go left, stop. It was awful. It would take like all day. And then, the bride would call you and say, my cousin Larry just gave us this new picture. Can you put it in the middle? And that meant back in those days that like you literally had to do the whole thing over. I don't know how we got into this, but weddings is how I got into it. I did that for years, and I actually did a run.
Did you start your own wedding company, or were you working as a freelancer?
No. So I was working for this thing, and I always had it was a good fit. I think creatively, I took to it right away because I don't do well in a 9 to 5. I think almost all of your listeners will relate to this. I can't check in at 9 and check out at 5. I'm fine to work every single day of the week, but not if you tell me I have to. Does that make sense?
It does. And you do. You probably work like 10 hours a day every day of the week.
Actually at work, I have a job behind me I'm getting to color tonight. But the point is, like, if you tell me I have to be there Monday from 9 to 5, I hate it. If I'm in charge of me, then I love it. That's the difference. Yeah. I think a lot of people will relate to that. So I was doing this wedding job. I was doing this wedding business. Taught me everything I know about shooting and editing. I can't recommend that enough. Mm-hmm. Not weddings, God no, but like finding your thing. Like
no, but I agree. I never knock weddings, man, because weddings. I mean, it really did teach me a lot, and it did. It gave me time to practice and kind of experiment and learn the craft of natural light and editing, and so I still use a lot of those skills.
You bullshitted your way into it. I remember you told me you're like someone said like, do you shoot weddings? And you're like, yeah, I do.
I lied and said, yeah, I do. Yeah, hire me.
No, so I was doing this. Going to pick up this thing and take it to another editor for some reason. And I went to, I remember this so clearly. I went to his bay, and I'd never been into a proper editing bay before. My editing bay was just like, this weird set of old machines. And he had on his desk a computer, two computer monitors, and above like a 55 or 65 inch TV. And some decks or whatever, back in that day was decks. And I thought to myself, I want this. Like, no, it seems stupid to say, but like, I thought I want this. Like, I want to be an editor with the 1, 2, 3 monitors and the thing above. And so I focused my energy on that. And the very next, year, it was actually even 6 months later, I rented my own studio. And I remember back in the day, it was like, nothing. It was like $1,000 a month or something like this for this 2-room studio. And I advertised myself on, there was this thing, LA 411. I advertised myself as an editor and a shooter. And I started making videos, and it was all because I saw that one thing and I knew I wanted it.
Where was your money coming from to buy all the equipment? Because your overhead, I mean, the editing equipment's gotten a lot cheaper over the years, but I remember we had a family friend that was an editor back in the day / director. He had $500,000 sunk into his studio.
Oh yeah. Stuff's certainly gotten a lot cheaper.
So where did you get the capital to build that initial 2-room studio?
Yeah. So I'll tell you that every single cent that I ever earned, I put back into the business.
Is that still true today?
It's still pretty true, which harkens back to 10 minutes ago when I told you that, if you need to do a shoot tomorrow with 2 Alexas and a light and a whole thing, I have it ready to go.
Yeah.
But every single cent I put back in the business, and I don't regret that decision. I mean, obviously, when I say every single cent, I was still eating and paying my rent and all my stuff but I just kept reinvesting in the business because I knew that if it was going to be a success, I had to believe it.
Yeah.
I had to believe in myself. I had to invest in myself. I needed to make others believe and invest their time and energy because we do is creative. It's very hard initially to assign a value to what you do. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I remember the first wedding I did was $400. That was to shoot and edit. And I probably spent, I don't know, 3 or 4 days editing. You know what I mean? So it's like, that to me was really exciting. This paid freelance gig was just like very new and very cool and exciting for me. And I thought $400, I was doing great because it was half the price of my camera. You know what I mean? But of course things change. And by the time I exited weddings, I was charging $6,000 a wedding, so and it was the same work, and actually faster because I could edit faster at that point.
Yeah. I have this story I'll share with you. I was meeting with this woman who was doing DRTV, direct TV, like infomercials. And she came to me and she wanted to like She had heard like that I was doing videos. No, sorry. Wrong. She found me in the LA 411, which I paid, by the way, to advertise in. It was like $5,000 back in the day. Before Google and all that stuff, there was this like super thick book like this, I can't swear on this. It was like an encyclopedia of like all the production companies. And I paid for a full page ad, which was like $5,000 or $6,000. So she found me. Yikes. She was doing infomercials. And she said, I want to do this infomercial. And I want you to make a proposal and a quote for me. So I still remember this so clearly. I spent 3 days thinking of every possible thing that I would need for this to make this infomercial. And the number I came up with was to make this entire job was $6,000. And I was so nervous. I was so nervous to share this.
Says no.
Yeah, no, I was so nervous to share this amount, $6,000. Like, how is anyone going to pay me? Because, like I said, assigning your worth, knowing your worth. So I was like, $6,000. Like, is she going to go? And I talked to my friends and my family about this $6,000. Like, it was such a big deal. Anyway, cut to the chase. We meet at like the Starbucks or whatever. We discuss the project. Nervously, I slide my brief across the table and she looks at it and I had this like whole presentation, so well done. And she gets to the bottom line. Yeah. She goes, $6,000. She goes, is that for our meeting today? What is that for? And I said, no, that's the price of the infomercial.
The full production.
And there was this like awkward pause. And I had this moment of fear. I'll never forget this. It's so like burned into me. I had this moment of fear that I had asked too much.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget this. She goes, huh. Oh. And I'm still thinking like, oh God, I asked too much. She goes, oh, I thought you were going to say like, she goes, oh, I thought you were going to ask me for like 250,000 or 300,000.
And what went through your mind? Yeah, like I'm trying to, yeah.
Well, first I was like, can I swear on your podcast? I was like, like, oh, beep, like, like that was a possibility,
Yeah.
But it really like opened my eyes to like, this is, I'm dramatically undercharging for my services. There's a whole other world where this stuff exists, blah, blah, blah. And that was sort of the gateway project. By the way, she's still my client to today, which is interesting.
And you charge her $250,000 per project, I'm sure.
We've raised her quota from 6,000. Yeah.
From 6,000, great.
Yeah, but learning to value and establish your services is something that I think is a growing pain that every creative income person probably watching this has either been through or will go through. And I'll tell you this right now, if you're watching this and you haven't, or listening to this, and you haven't assigned a value to yourself, I think the good thing to do is to open up a text document, write one paragraph about what you do and value your services, and then just repeat it and like believe in it. And believe it or not, like that simple like mantra will generate that work at the price range you're looking for.
So taking this into practice, you had this experience. Do you remember the next time? Did you do that video, by the way, for $6,000?
No, she actually went with somebody who charged her $200,000 and, can I swear, beeped it up. And she came back to me to fix it. Isn't that interesting? After all that? So here I am trying to charge $6,000. She goes to someone who charges her a couple $100,000. They completely mess it up. And she comes back to me to fix it.
Yeah. And now she's one of your clients.
Yeah. And has been
how many years later? For 15 years, 20 years?
Oh God, I've been doing this. I'm an old man, Lars. I've been doing this professionally 20 years. Yeah.
Okay. So then the next time you had a client knock on your door and say, I want something done, did you quote them 20,000, 40,000? What did you learn from that experience?
It took me a while to build up the value of what I was worth. In fact, that was just an eye-opening experience. I still sort of knock-kneed, tried to I went up from 6,000, but I remember from 6,000, I went to like 10,000. And then from 10,000, I went to like 15, and then from 15 I went to like 20, and then
Yeah.
there was a certain
Of course,
point.
it depends on the project, right? But
No, of course. Wait, I don't want to get people watching this thinking like,
yeah,
every project's different.
yeah,
Obviously, I've worked with you on a lot of projects that were only 20 or whatever, but
yeah,
there comes a point where you get to establish a value for your services, because essentially what we're making is art, and what is art worth? And that's a tough question to ask, because there is no baseline set. So in the industry, so who you're making this for cinematographers, for audio people, for painters, for anybody who's making a creative income, right?
That's right. Yep.
Right. So what is the value of what you do worth? And that's the question that you have to ask yourself. And that's the question that it takes forever. You take, give me an example from the art world, Lars.
Painter, oil painter. Someone
Jackson
wants me
Pollock,
to.
right? Okay, take Jackson Pollock.
Sure.
Jackson Pollock is dripping paint on a canvas. And if you don't know who Jackson Pollock is, I'm sure you do, but look him up.
Yeah.
And you look at that, and I have a 9-year-old daughter, and I think like that is something my 9-year-old daughter could do. And, here we are years later, and David Geffen is buying a Jackson Pollock for $140 million for some like drizzled paint on a canvas. And that's because there's an established value. It's not just like a supply and demand. It's an established value. When you first start something, and I'm sure that with that imposter syndrome we talked about earlier, that you can relate to this, but when you first start something, if you set your value, people will believe your value. If you set your value low, it's almost impossible to recover from that initial value set. So
moving forward, you mean working with that person again?
So for example, I'm not going to name names because just in case they're watching this, but I used to work with this PA, and the PA worked for like, I don't know, $150 for the day or something. Mm-hmm. And I worked with him for like a year. And over the year, I was paying him $150 regularly for being a PA. This was years ago. I think you pay PAs more now, but he came to me and he said, "Oh, I just got this." I think it was like you. It was like a Rebel or like a 5D or 7D or something like that. And now I'm shooting. And I said, "Oh, thinking in my mind like that's cute, whatever." And he goes, "But now my rate is $350 a day." And I said, "Okay." And then he came to me a little bit later and he said, "Now I'm directing and my rate is $1,000 a day." I said, "Oh, that's interesting." He goes, "Well, I've actually been directing quite a lot recently, and now my rate is $2,000 a day." But in my mind, I could never get over the fact that I had paid this person $150 for over a year's time. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
I guess, was he coming back to you to be a PA still? Like, was he coming back to say like, let's PA some more? Or was he coming back where you hiring him as a director?
PA. He was saying, hire me for this other thing. And guess what? He was actually really good at those other things. He had moved up. He had applied his knowledge. He'd watched people like yourself who were very talented. He'd looked at what they were doing, and he was actually really good. But it took me a long time to reassess a value to that person's skill, because I had known them as the PA. Now, and when you come in and you and I work together, and just in case people are watching, I won't tell you what you charge me, but it's $
20,000 a day.
It's $20,000 a minute.
Yeah, that's right.
No, you get a good rate as a DP. You're an established DP, but I met you as an established DP. Right. And so my value, my thought process, my value assessment of you has always been that that if I'm going to hire Lars, it's going to cost this. So
I think an interesting thing also with value is once you say, like, let's say you're you're a young DP, and once you say like, no, I'm $1,000 a day, when someone hires you for $1,000 a day, that imposter syndrome starts to creep in, and it makes you push yourself to give them the best possible product. So I almost think that it's a win-win, right? So when you value yourself and you position yourself with a high value like that, you're going to deliver 1,000% every time. And I think that that's a positive thing for the client, because they get an amazing product, and it's a good thing for you because you've now said, this is what I'm worth and this is what I'm going to get.
if you want to be hired again, you'd better deliver.
Yes. Deliver. Yeah.
I mean, you know, that client I told you about that I was so nervous for the $6,000 for, by the way, that was a 30-minute infomercial, by the way. Just want you to understand.
Wow.
It wasn't a 30-second thing. It was a 30-minute infomercial.
$6,000.
Now you understand. Okay, right. So yeah, I was so nervous, but 30 minutes. During that job, she asked me if I could do motion graphics. Now I'd heard of After Effects at the time. And I said, yes, I can do motion graphics. And so what did I do?
Yeah.
I spent 2 weeks. And by the way, there was no like YouTube or lynda.com or like any of that stuff to like teach you back then. I like literally sat down in front of a program. I had no idea.
Did you read the manual?
No, but I just went to like every menu thing, like file, ... What does this do? 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 I spent 2 weeks, like, and when I say 2 weeks, I don't mean 2 weeks like casually a few hours a day. I mean like I was locked in my studio learning After Effects. And that's why today I know After Effects, because of that one job. So an advice I would give anybody, and this is the jack of all trades, is learn everything you can, but make sure when you present yourself that you can do it, that you do an outstanding job. But that's up to the individual, of course.
So you started as an editor. You had this little studio as an editor, and people come to you and they start saying, hey, can you produce as well? Can you direct as well? Can you put this whole thing together? What gave you the courage to, or the lack thereof of something, just to say, yeah, let's go for it?
Hubris, you know, the want to do more. I don't like not knowing things. I don't like the fact that I was an editor and I was seeing all this cool footage, but I had no idea about, you know, what lenses were, cameras were, how they worked. So I remember I started my business in 2000, and I think this was like 2005 that I kept hearing, 2006, that I kept hearing like, but can you shoot this as well? Can you shoot this as well? Can you shoot this as well? And finally I just was like, yeah, just said yes. And I went out and I just I think I even PA'd on just to learn. I called some local DPs that I knew and I said, listen, I will work for free on the next 4 jobs you have if I can just shadow you. And I just want you to, as you're doing something, explain to me what it is you're doing, why you're doing it, and how it works. And of course, you know, five of the 10 DPs I talked to said, no, that sounds awful. I'm not doing that. And then the other 5 were like, yeah, man, come on, I'll show you. And
I'll teach you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I learned okay, you know, if you open this up and you see how much light there is, and I'm going to drop an ND and then And I was like, oh, that's what what does this map box do? What is the point of it? So it was only through curiosity and necessity that I learned. And by the way, my very first job where we were hired as a production company to shoot something was a very well-known infomercial, which was not the other person I want to talk to you about. It was for a makeup brand that I'm sure if you said you would know. But my very first job as a production company that also shot was something that was noteworthy because I sat there and I just learned.
So talk to me about as you start to grow, maybe your facility gets bigger, you're bringing on bigger clients, you're hiring employees. What have you been able to do to adapt? Because you said you've been in the industry 20 years. I'm sure things have changed. We went through a period in your career where film was kind of everything, and if you wanted it to look good and cinematic, and then that dropped out and digital kind of took over. I'm sure with that, prices came crashing down, competition came up. So what have you been able to do to pivot and stay afloat through all these changes in the industry?
That's a good question. Well, I think it's good to set a baseline for this question. I remember going to an edit house. There was this high time in Los Angeles, by the way, when
I know.
Oh, you were part of it, or
I wasn't part of it.
You were on the other side of it.
I was on the other side of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I have two little characters that changed this whole thing, which was, 5D, Canon 5D changed this whole thing. But basically I went to this edit house. I was working with, and I won't say the name just in case they're watching, but we want to talk about the opulence that was the baseline originally. I was working at this edit house that did spots for Coke and for Nike and blah, blah, blah. And they were charging $1,500 an hour for their work. Now think about like that in terms of, you know, who makes that? Lawyers make like $400 or $500 an hour. You know, like
doctors make $400 or $500 an hour.
Yeah, they were making $1,500 an hour. So you walk into the lobby. I remember this girl pulled up on a little like motor scooter moped with a tray of sushi in her hand. I'll never forget this. This is real. This is a real thing that happened. With a tray of sushi. Yikes. And said, "Would you like some sushi?" And I'm like, "Sure." And then she's like, "Here, you can rent this moped." I mean, not rent. I mean, you can have this moped. And I would drive the little moped like around this huge like hangar facility. And, you know, like the guys on the Flame and all this stuff were making this much money. All of a sudden, what comes into the industry, and this is what you're talking about, the digital revolution comes in. There's this thing by Canon called a 5D. Camera. For those of you who don't know, it's a DSLR. It was, you know,
we mentioned it probably 4 or 5 times on the podcast.
Price of that, like $2,000, $3,000 bucks.
$2,500 for the body.
$2,500. Yep. So instead of like spending like, you know, millions of dollars on stuff, all of a sudden, everybody and their brother was a DP. It was like, oh yeah. My uncle is a DP. It's like, really?
And Final Cut Pro. It was like Final Cut Pro 6 and the 5D Mark
1, by the way. I started on 1. Nice. And the Canon 5D, and you were in business. Everybody was a DP. Yeah. The problem is they started and they said, yeah, I'll make you a video. And guess what? The commercial, whatever, say you're making a commercial. The commercial wasn't $1 million. By the way, back then, a commercial standard budget was sort of like, what was it? Like $2 to $4 million, something like that?
Yeah, 1 to 3. Yeah, something like that.
All of a sudden, the Canon 5D comes in. Guess how much my brother's uncle will make you that video for? He'll make you a commercial for $500. And then the weird thing was, by this point I was already in sort of like I had made that imposter. This comes after that story of the $6,000 and the imposter syndrome. I was established by this point. So
you were making good money at this point.
I was already making good money. I was loving, like I was renting this 3-room studio, 3 edit-based studio with like a huge lounge at this point. I was in Venice, which was cool. It was a cool spot. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I'm competing against people who will make you a commercial for $500. And to tell you the truth, I mean, like 90% was garbage, but 10% of the people, probably like yourself, really knew what they were doing, and it really looked great. And it suddenly became very hard to justify a creative income. You know, how are you going to charge $2 million for a commercial when somebody's going to make it for $500? So my advice was always like, I'd say, go make the commercial with them. Spend $500. Like, what is it? You know, go check it out. And
what do you got to lose?
And see, what do you got to lose? And see, and sometimes, you know, they came to me and said it was great. And some 90% of the time they said, you know, this person knows not what they're talking about. But it's not because of the equipment. It was because they just didn't know. They didn't take the time to learn their craft. And Lars, you are so good. Of all the jobs we've worked together, you have such a wonderful eye, and you always know how to set something up, and you know you work with such a speed. If anyone watching this has not worked with Lars, he's amazing. Check out his work. He's amazing. I hire him.
Thank you, Noah.
I know I will. I mean, how many times have I hired you? And by the way, we've worked together on like big commercials, and we've traveled together, and we've done a lot of these things together. And a lot of it is the look you get. I'd say that's about 80% of the reason I hire you. The other 20% is just, no, it's, I mean, of course, it's paramount. Yeah. And the other % is attitude. It's just like, you know, you have a great attitude. You work fast. I would say anybody watching, I keep saying watching because you're making a podcast that you have a video component. But
yeah, we throw it up on YouTube too. Mostly listeners right now. Okay.
So anybody watching or listening, I'd say check out Lars's work, but it's the speed and it's the attitude with which you work. And if you take nothing from what I'm saying, attitude is everything. What do I always tell
Yeah.
you? What do I always tell you?
When you hire my
people.
crew, exactly. You say
Don't
anytime
bring me
I bring you a new crew person, you ask, are they grumpy?
Are they grumpy?
It's always the key grip. Is the key grip grumpy?
Gaffers are always grumpy. I don't know why.
Yeah,
you guys are
gaffers.
so grumpy. They have a thorn.
Yeah,
in their
I would even venture to say, Noah, that it's more like 50-50. 50%, what's your work look like? 50%, what's your attitude, and how fast are you? And because I do think that it's honestly, I can say this because it's me. I'm a dime a dozen in Los Angeles when it comes to
you are not a dime a dozen. What is this imposter syndrome you're kicking in your own podcast, Lars?
No, but I do think that there's
looks beautiful, and you do it with elegance and you do it with confidence, and that's why I hire you. I don't hire you for your cool name, Lars. Although that's a good reason. That's about 10% of why I hire you, just your name.
Yeah, it's a nice little icebreaker for people. Lars Lindstrom. That sounds like a cinematographer. Can't wait to hear his accent. What? Yeah. And then they're disappointed. Yeah.
Oh.
I know. Well, cool, man. So we've got the studio. Things are going well. Now, we didn't really hit on the pivot though. So what did you do to make sure that your overhead? Yeah, so we got this.
Yeah, commercials are charging between $2 to $4 million. By the way, if you don't know, nowadays a commercial that is even a big name like Coke and Nike. By the way, Coke is one of my Nike, Brother, Coke, Lexus, McDonald's. These are my current clients. Yeah. A modern commercial for a big name client no longer goes for $4 million. What do you think? Like 250, 350? What's like a normal commercial?
Yeah, 200. 200 is kind of that sweet spot that I keep seeing. Yeah. For a big commercial, you're doing like a 30-second television commercial, national spot. Yeah, it's like $200,000 is kind of where we've settled. So you go a tenth. That's from 2 million to 200,000.
Right.
We've now shrunk that by a tenth.
Yeah. So the way the digital pivot hit was, and I was a post-production and production facility. The difference is I have never, now even today, where I'm sitting in a edit bay at my place, I have never hired a full-time employee. I always find really good people that I hire to do what they do. I find the best DPs, the best editors, the best colorists, the best sound people, the best everything. And I hire those people per job. And that's the difference that the reason I was able to, all those other companies that went out of business is because they were sitting on a staff of like
30 people.
Yeah. 30
their overhead. Some of their burn rates were probably $1 million a month.
Well, what do you do if you go a whole week and you don't have a job and you have 50 people to feed? Like what do you do? So it's you're out of business, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's fascinating. I actually never knew that about you because you have a beautiful facility, and I didn't realize that you were the sole employee of that facility.
Well, I'm the sole employee of my corporation.
Of course, yeah.
Of which that hires lots of people. You should also probably talk on your podcast about the benefits of corporation versus.
Let's do it. Let's break it down because both you and I are S corporation.
Yes.
And I'm curious why you like S corporation. Ready, set, go.
Is this as opposed is IRS watching this?
Yeah, no. All right. As opposed to, and I absolutely there's some tax advantages, but a S corporation as opposed to an LLC, which is essentially not a taxable entity, it's just a sole proprietorship. So,
well, a sole proprietorship means that all the money that comes in, all of the income that comes in, all of the things that you own, your house, your car, the laptop, the camera, every little thing you have belongs to you. It's all one thing.
It's you. It's just you. There's no protection.
You
it's
are
just
the
you.
company. Yeah. So if there's ever a problem, all of that stuff, all of the thing that you work to build is at risk.
In jeopardy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's what LLCs are for. So you can have an LLC and that protects just your business assets, but it's still taxed as a sole proprietorship. Now you can also have an LLC under an S corporation. Mm-hmm. So you can protect the corporation from any other thing as well. But as far as I understand,
I chose an S corporation, which means that I need to pay myself a reasonable salary. Mm-hmm. But the company itself can make or lose as much money as it wants to. The company can get sued. Whatever. God forbid, but like, you know,
of course.
No, of course. But there's a layer of protection there, that inherently just protects you from so many things. I can't recommend it enough. For those of you who are watching or listening, I keep saying watching, listening. Yeah.
There you go.
For those of you who are engaged in this podcast,
there you go.
I would highly recommend becoming an S Corp because it encapsulates you from a layer of risk, but it also provides you tremendous, just look it up, provides you tremendous tax. So
there's the Social Security tax. So if you're a sole proprietor, you pay 15% Social Security tax. And under S Corporation, you only pay the 15% for the salary you pay yourself. The rest of it is 7.5%. It's cut in half. So that's a tax advantage. The other thing I like about S Corporation is that it's impressive for loans. So it's like if you have an S Corporation, it's easier in my mind, I don't know if this is based on anything, to get a business loan to finance equipment than otherwise. If you're sole proprietor, good luck. They're going to rake you through the coals.
And also tell them about the 179.
Oh, the 179. I mean, you can do 179 tax deduction. I think you can do it as a sole proprietor. Can't you?
Oh, okay.
I think so. Yeah, 179 tax deduction is a tax write-off for equipment. And you can write off federally up to $1 million a year for a calendar year and not use depreciation. You can write off the full amount for a calendar year for certain qualifying equipment. So, but I think you can do that as a S Corp as well. Or sorry, I'm sole proprietor.
Yeah, but if you buy $1 million worth of things and write them off, and then you're a sole proprietor, and then somebody sues you, you are in danger.
They can come after those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. They can come after your house. They can come after your kids. I'm just kidding. They probably can't. Come after your kids. Yeah. No, but that's what LLCs are for. And an LLC, again, I understand it is not like an actual entity. It's just a protection. It's a limited liability company. So you can protect yourself as a sole proprietor, or you can protect your corporation. That's all it is. But yeah, I love the advantages of S Corporation. There's a lot of I don't like to have my taxes withheld when I do jobs. So as an S Corporation, I can do something called a loan out or a 1099 rather than have to be on payroll for that company. So there's a lot of benefits for me. So I don't have to pay taxes all throughout the year. I can just pay it at the end of the year after I do all my deductions.
I think this ends your tax portion of the podcast because...
That's right. Yeah. We don't want to... Yeah. And I should probably mention that I'm not a CPA. You should not take anything I say literally. This is for entertainment purposes only.
Right.
Yeah.
What was your story, by the way? I'm very curious. You may have talked about it on other podcasts, but what was your... I know you one day said, sure, I do weddings when somebody asked you. What was your transition story?
This guy named Noah said, hey, do you shoot commercials? And I said, sure I do. And I lied. And here we are on a podcast.
Yeah.
No, I built the wedding business, and the last year I did weddings, I did 38, well into the six figures. And I got burnt out on it. So I just transitioned. I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I sold the company, and I bought an Alexa, and I said, I'm going to do cinematic things. And I honestly, I pivoted. I used the Alexa as leverage to get onto more interesting sets. And I did it really, really cheaply at first. I said, I will come with this Alexa. And it was very impressive at the time. You know, people were doing small music videos, even feature films or short films, for me to say, I don't care what you pay me. I'm going to show up and we're going to make this look awesome. I've got this Alexa. And they went, whoa, yeah, let's get that guy. And so there was like maybe 6 to 12 months of that, of just doing anything I could at whatever rate I could to get the footage for a good reel. And then I could actually be a serious person and you know, pursue people and pitch with actual good looking content.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you reinvested back in yourself. Oh,
and we've talked about reinvesting, you know, in equipment a lot on this podcast. So I am curious, and you've got this, you do a lot of production now. You've got an editing facility, but you also do a lot of production. You own all of your gear almost, right? So it's 100%. Why was that valuable for you?
Well, like I said, you know, if you called me on a Tuesday and said we have a 5 camera shoot tomorrow, you know, what are my options? I could years ago I could drive over to Wooden Nickel and deal with that, or like,
get all their lights and
yeah,
go to Claremont and pick up a bunch of cameras. Yeah.
Right. Or I could, nowadays I could go on ShareGrid and drive over to Burbank and find somebody's and then drive over here and pick up a lens and drive over here and pick up a light and drive over
and realize it's missing the viewfinder cable, and then you drive back to Burbank and
then, or I could have it all ready to go. And what's interesting is a lot of the stuff has actually made me money in interesting ways during the pandemic. So, you've been to my facility. Other people who are listening to this haven't been, but we have a big psych over here, and we've got a sound booth over here, and we've got edit stuff over here. During the pandemic, I had previously invested in live streaming equipment, and it wasn't to become a live streaming company. It was just because, and this is what we were talking about earlier, but it was just because somebody said to me a few years ago, do you do live streaming? Now, I'd never done live streaming ever before, but I said, sure, I do live streaming. By the way, put a pin in that. Here's my biggest advice. If someone says, do you do something? You say yes.
Yeah.
Then you figure it out.
You figure it out, man.
Figure it out. So I invested in this live streaming equipment. Then the pandemic hit. I realized I have a green screen stage with, like I have an Alexa sitting right there, all these lights, the mics. I have this thing. What was very valuable in the pandemic? No contact. So here we are in Culver City. I had all these people come in, and I advertised myself as a no contact stage. And what that meant was the lights and the camera and the mic and everything was set up, flick of a switch. I'm here behind double glass in a control room. Mm-hmm. They walk in, boom. I have 3-4 monitors set up that I port the Zoom, the director, or whatever out to. And so that was a creative, use. That was a creative income use of something that I already had. So establishing yourself is one thing, realizing what you have, and that's you're talking about, why did I buy all this equipment? It just continues to provide, as long as you're aware of an opportunity, are able to identify the opportunity and able to pivot at any moment. I'm a production company. That doesn't mean that I'm not a COVID friendly stage, right?
So for you, was owning equipment more out of convenience, or was it a means to make money?
It was both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there any priority for you? Was it more convenient than it was nice to make the extra cash, or was it?
I think was more convenience. It was 70% convenient for me. That has also 70% made me. I think my math is good. There's 70%, 70%. Yeah, that's right.
140%.
Yeah. It's 140% made me cash, but it was it was because of. I mean, put it this way: how many Alexas do you own? You own 3 or 4 or something like that?
4. Yeah, 4 Alexas.
Yeah, and you've got your like beautiful prime lenses. And last time we shot on those on anamorphics and If you had to go and rent those every single time, I probably, and by the way, you have a big grip truck, and you have you have all these things. I'm sure. Why did you invest in those things?
It was both, and I think at first maybe it changed for me. So at first it was heavier on the convenience side. Mm-hmm. Right, because I hated, especially the grip truck. That was a risk for me. I wasn't sure I was going to make any money, and it ended up being one of my best investments. But I went into it because I hated building grip and electric lists for every job. Right, couldn't stand it. Oh, it drove me crazy. So now I just I go scout a location, and I go, cool. My truck can handle everything here except for this one thing, and I'm going to need to rent that from Wood and Nickel or whatever. And it's just one light or one thing, you know what I mean? Yeah. Instead of an entire, 300 item list, and you just forget like one part of the menace arm kit and you're screwed. I'd much rather just have that entire thing on a truck, and I know it's there. I know what it's capable of. And that for me was always been convenience. It just happened to make a lot of money. The cameras are different. Now I'm buying lenses that I'm not planning on using at all. I'm just putting in a rental house, and it makes me money as an investment. So it started as convenience, pivoted into make money.
And it's worked. I mean, every time I hire you, you say, I'm this much. if you want to add the cameras in the grip truck, it's this much. And
Mm-hmm.
we do, because it's convenient. And I know you have everything you need. And plus you light everything with one light anyway.
Oh, you've noticed?
Yeah,
Uh-oh.
I've noticed.
I'm teaching you too much, Noah.
Yeah, I know.
I'm gonna throw you off in the next shoot and bring all the lights out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. Is there any advice you have for young creatives starting out? Anything you'd like to say? One piece of advice.
Know your worth. Say yes to everything. And do your work. Like, don't say yes to something that you don't have any intention of completing. Yeah. You're only as good as your last job. I mean, when I said yes to being an editor, I just went in full force. When I said yes to being a production company, I went in full force. When I told that woman for the beauty makeup brand, I do motion graphics. What did I do? I spent 2 weeks in my garage with After Effects, just like learning it, like 12 hours a day, you know? So if you say yes, do it, but you're going to end up better. You're going to learn a skill. You're going to be more valuable to, as a player on set, as a player in your creative industry. I mean, of course, I'm speaking more to the people who do what we do, which is, you know, film and TV and all that stuff. But I think no matter what you do, if you learn a new skill and say yes, as long as you follow through on it, which you need that hunger and you need that drive. But as long as you say yes and you do it, you're set up. You know, the next time someone says, do you do motion graphics? You say, yeah, and you mean it because you do, you know?
Yeah, I love it. Great. Thanks so much for being here, man. We'll let you go.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll catch you next time.
Which I got to get back to coloring this job over here, but
yeah, it's the first time you've ever opened DaVinci, right?
My first time. I said yes to it.
I always say that. I think I've said it maybe on one or two of your sets. I love doing it to client. I have to know the client well though before I can do it. Where I'll show up on a set, you know, commercial. And I'll say, "Wow, I just can't thank you guys enough for trusting me on the very first time on my very first commercial." It's my favorite thing to do, just to see people go. Ooh.
What's your advice? What's your advice for the first time? You probably maybe said this a bunch.
I've said this a lot, yeah, but I love what you said about say yes to everything. When you're starting out, get in the habit of saying yes to everything, so you know what it's like to work for other people, right? So you'll have plenty of time to be creative. You'll have plenty of time to be an artist and follow your passions and be artistic and interesting and weird or whatever you want. You'll have plenty of time to do that once you've made money monetizing your passion. And to do that, you have to say yes to people, and you have to understand that for a little bit, you're not going to be that artistic, creative, whatever for that makeup brand. You're going to do what they want. You're going to say yes. You're going to figure it out. You're going to hone in on your skills. You're going to perfect the craft. And then someday when you're making boatloads of money because you said yes to all those people and now are paying you a lot more than $6,000 for a 30-minute infomercial, you can sit back and say, now I'm going to follow my passion, and I have this money. I've got this cushion. I'm going to be creative, and I'm going to do what I want. So that's my advice.
Well, do what you know, what's the old adage? Like, do what you love. You never work a day in your life, I think.
Yeah.
Sounds corny, but you know, there's a really interesting, one of my favorite philosophers, Alan Watts, he said, this is an interesting experiment here for your listeners. He said, okay, I want you to imagine that you have an infinity sign next to your bank account. Like, you have an amount of money that you could never get through in a lifetime. You could never spend it. Whatever it is, $1 billion, $1 trillion, don't worry about money. That is now out of the equation. It's gone, right? Now, what do you want to do with your life? And what do 99% of people say? Can you guess?
No, I can't live on a beach and drink Mai Tais.
They say travel. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
And now you have all the money in the world, and you've been to every beach. You've had all the Mai Tais. You've been to every cave. You've been to every meadow. You've been to every mountaintop. You've been to every village. You have the money, and you've traveled. Now, what do you want to do? Once you've got all that out of the way, and that answer is what you should actually be striving towards. You know, if whatever that thing is, that is something you should be incorporating into your daily life. And for me, and this sounds super cheesy, but I would be doing what I do. I really love what I do. Really love what I do. And so
we get to create all day. Yeah. Cool. I'm going to sign off with that. Thanks so much, Noah.
Okay. Thank you for having me.